Last summer, or a couple summers ago, I took my youth group to a summer camp up in the Monadnock region. And we had such a great time. And I remember it was really fun and the kids were really engaged. But I remember there was one night they were like, hey, let's do these fun nighttime game activities. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'm so excited for that, except for the fact that they didn't really explain to the counselors what they were supposed to be doing. So we show up to the lake that we're supposed to be at. And kids are running around, going crazy. Water's being thrown around everywhere. And I'm just here for the ride, I guess. And then afterwards, they're like, hey, let's go to the field and we're gonna play some games and then we'll do some fireworks or whatever. And I'm like, we're doing fireworks? What's happening? And so we get to this field, right? And kids just start going berserk. Kids running around everywhere. I'm confused. No one's explaining what's happening. And I think I saw kids fighting over a mattress, I think at one point. And I was like, what is happening? And then out of nowhere, a firework just starts going off. And I remember me and the counselor I was with were just staring at each other what are we supposed to be doing right now? What is our role in the midst of all of this? And I wonder, have you ever felt that way before? Maybe there wasn't fireworks or something crazy kids running around, but I think a lot of us know what it feels like to be am I doing this right? Life, where do I fit in all of this? What is it that I'm actually supposed to be doing? And I think this really hits us when we're going through big life transitions. I think about it we're in summertime right now, and it's wedding season, and it's graduation season, and there's all kinds of big life transitions happening. Maybe you just had kids, or you're entering into retirement. And it seems like everyone has expectations. It seems like everyone has a suggestion. It seems like everyone has a question for you. And it seems like sometimes it can just be overwhelming. And it seems like you should just have all the answers just figured out by now. But not only does this hit us in the life big transitions, but this hits us in everyday moments. Think about it. When your boss gives you that extra task that isn't in your job description, or you just had kids, and then in the middle of a meltdown, you just don't know what to do. And so we start searching for the answers. And we all know that if you just go on Google and just type in a question or something, you'll get thousands of websites, thousands of articles telling you what it is that the answer is. It seems overwhelming sometimes. But even with all the information, even with culture, even with our own decisions, have you ever caught yourself asking, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is my role in the midst of all of this craziness? Because I don't know about you, but I have exhausted myself trying to find what the right answer is. And I would exhaust myself just to have someone tell me, Elisha, I think you're doing it right. Well, today we're starting our new summer reading series that we're super excited about, where we're going to be covering the full arc, the full theme of the Bible. And what I love about the Bible, what I love about God, is that God is a God who never changes. God, he's the same yesterday, he's the same today, and he's the same tomorrow. He's the same God. And so the story that we see in Scripture is actually the same story that we see every day being played out in our everyday lives. And so we see the creation, that God creates everything. We see, sorry, my mic is falling off. We see the fall, that everything doesn't seem to go the way that it's supposed to. We see that Jesus comes and redeems everything. And then we see that God is bringing about a new creation. And that's the story that God actually invites us into. But what role do we play in the story? Because if we're confused about who we are as the characters in the story, it's hard to kind of move in the midst of the story if we don't know what God created us for in the first place. Because if we're confused about why we're here and what we're intended to be here for, we open up to ourselves to all the different voices that are trying to tell us what to do and who to become. And we just get more confused when all those voices come. And not only do we get more confused, but we start to get frustrated. And it's not just frustrated, but tired, exhausted, as it turns out that we just don't know the answer to what we should be doing. Give me 1 second, because my mic is really fighting me here. You see, we're alive. But have you felt like you were just going through the motions? But I have some good news. What if we don't just have to go through the motions? What if we knew exactly who we were and we knew exactly what God wanted us to do? Well, that would change the way we interact with the world and the way that we live our lives, because when we know who we are, we'll know what to do. And when we know who we are and we know what to do, we don't have to exhaust ourselves trying to find the answer to the question, am I living life the right way? How can we live the right way when we are confused about who we are? Well, this confusion about identity is not just a modern day problem. If you go back to the ancient world, you'll see that this is a problem that's been happening ever since, I guess you could say, the beginning of time, of people trying to find out who they are. And I know the age-old question, like, who am I? Like, who am I supposed to be? It still lingers to this day. But in the ancient cultures, there's these kings and there's these important people in authority. And these people, they were known as the important ones. Like, these are the people that had it made. They had it all figured out. But ordinary people, back in that day, they were made to serve the system, to serve the people that were in the authority figures. And so we see that there's a world full of voices, competing voices, trying to tell people who they are. But then we see that the book of Genesis steps onto the scene. And Genesis has a different kind of voice that has a different story for us to tell. So let's start by looking at the first few verses in the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. The Bible, it starts with the words, "In the beginning, God created." And we see right from the jump that there is a creator who creates the heavens and the earth. And in the midst of in the midst of a formless world, we see that God is in the midst of it, interacting with his world, hovering over the waters, and he's present with creation. This is so important because God, he's a God who interacts with the world that he's created. God's not a God who is just up in heaven just watching and just hoping that we just figure out what we're supposed to be doing and who we're supposed to be. No, he's intentional. And he actually is right where he wants us to be, and he's actually right in the midst of everything that we do. And then we see in verse 3 that God, he chooses to create. And immediately after, so he says the famous words that we all love to say, "And God said," "Let there be light." And immediately after the word was spoken, we see that light come into fruition, and there was light. And the light was formed just the way God wanted it to. And God, he looked at it and he was well pleased with it, and it was formed intentionally just as he intended it to. And again, we see that theme happen over and over and over again throughout the chapter, that God speaks and creation responds. God speaks and creation responds. We see that God creates the stars. He creates the sun and the moon. And he's the birds and the animals and the trees and the flowers and the grass. He creates everything that we see. And at the end of each day, God saw that all that he made in creation was good. It came about just as he had said. Because when the Creator speaks, creation responds accordingly. So God, he creates the light, he separates the waters, he fills the sky, fills the earth, and then Genesis starts to really slow down for us. It starts to reveal, I guess you could say, the crown jewel of God's creation. Let's move on to the text. It says, "Then God said, 'Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and over the livestock and all the wild animals and over all the creatures that move along the ground.' So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them." We see here once again, "Then God said." Give me 1 second again. There we go. "Then God said." But this time, he doesn't just say what it is that he's creating, but he actually gives us a reason as to why he's creating it. I was thinking of it kind of like this. Have you ever been in a situation where you were with your parents and your parents told you to do something? Maybe it was like do the dishes or clean your room or whatever it is. And you're asked, well, why am I supposed to be doing that? And they're asked, well, and they just say, well, because I said so. It can be so frustrating to not know the reason as to why something is there or why something's been commanded or expected of us. But we see that's not what God's doing here. Actually, God does the opposite. He actually gives us the reason as to why we are here or why he commanded us to be here, so that we may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the air and over all the creatures that move along the ground. And you see, just as God speaks, creation responds, and he creates people. He creates us here on earth. And he said that he created them in his image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. You see, back in the day when Genesis was being written, there were these kings. And these kings, like Pharaoh in Egypt or like the king in Babylon, these people were known to be made in the image of God. They were supposed to represent their gods to the people of the times. And these people were supposed to be the authority, and everyone else was supposed to serve them. And they also would create statues of themselves. And they would place these statues throughout the nation, letting people know who it was that was in charge. It's like, I'm the one that's in charge, and remember that. But we see here that Genesis paints a different picture as to what this king, this God, creates, is that he doesn't just set one person apart as being made in the image of God. In fact, he creates everyone. Every person is created in this image, in the image of God. And God doesn't just create statues that are made of stone or made of wood. God, he makes living statues. He makes people that are created in his image. God is a God who is alive. And so it only makes sense that he would create beings that are made in his image who are living and breathing just as he is. And this is actually something that we experience in our own lives as well. And this happened to me the other day. I was going for a walk, and I just made a joke. And I remember I was laughing and I was smiling. And I remember the person I was walking with just called it out immediately, like, hey, you look just like your grandfather, like when you smiled like that. And I was like, whoa, like actually, like, wow, that's amazing. But it makes me think about how we look and we bear the image of the people that we come from. And in the same way, we bear the image of the one that we come from God, and we bear his image. And maybe you come in here today and you feel like you've made some mistakes. Or you don't always feel like you're your best self. Or maybe you don't feel like you measure up to that standard. Well, the good news is that being an image bearer is not about anything that we've done or about any feeling that we have, but it's simply who it is that God has created us to be. So God, he finishes his creation and he establishes order in the midst of it. And then he creates his image bearers, us, to be here on earth, to continue that order and to make flourishing into this world. And then we see that God, that through that he's going to give us life and that maintaining that order. But have you ever noticed that it's very hard to maintain and keep order in your everyday life? I mean, think about trying to keep order when it comes to your family, when it comes to like maintaining your thought life or maintaining some of the, like your room even. Like all these things can be so complicated. It's so hard. Well, when I was taking chemistry class, I remember there was this law called thermodynamics. And thermodynamics is just a simple way of just saying that it's how energy moves. But I don't remember basically anything about thermodynamics because I barely passed chemistry class. But I remember the second law of thermodynamics because they're related to my everyday life, is that without effort, everything reverts back to chaos and disorder. And I was like, yeah, I can relate to that one, that's for sure. Is that without the effort, everything just goes back to chaos and disorder. And I was just thinking about how true that is. It's like we just continue to do the dishes, and then we go back and the sink is full again. Or we do the laundry, and then the basket's full again. And we're like, whoa, didn't I just do this? It takes a lot of effort. But have you ever considered that simply being who it is that God has created us to be might be a burden too heavy to carry? That God, he wants to have us establish and create that order, but maybe trying to keep that order is just too hard. Well, God, he creates us, but before he ever tells us what to do, he actually does something very fascinating, something really amazing. And let's continue on in Genesis because I think this is going to be so helpful for us. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Before God tells mankind what it is that they're supposed to be doing, he blesses them. This is so important because I think many of us think that if we just started living the right way, then we'd be blessed. That if we just started doing the right things, if we just started trying to please God, if we just started trying to just have all of our lives figured out, then I'd be living the right way. Then I would be blessed. But we see here that God blesses first. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number." And here's the thing, when we make the mistake that thinking that life is all about our productivity, that life's all about the things that we're supposed to be doing and not first establishing that God has blessed us and wants to have a relationship with us, well, we replace the image bearer calling that God has given us and we take on the role of a burden bearer. Because the bestowing of the gift, of the stewarding creation and maintaining order, without first having that blessing, that becomes a big burden. But God blesses us for the role that he has created us in his image because he's so well pleased with how he made us. You see, humanity was created to live out of God's blessing, not to earn it. God created you to be filled with life. And out of that life, help our world flourish and to help our world grow. He did not create us to become burden bearers. He created us to become image bearers, made in his image. And God is a God that is filled with life. And he wants the same for us. He wants us to be filled with life as well. And then out of that blessing, out of that life that he's bestowed to us, then comes our purpose. Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and over living creatures that move along the ground. But I think that leaves the question, if God blesses us, why doesn't it always feel that way sometimes? Why does it feel like there's confusion, exhaustion, and so much striving going on in the world? Well, maybe it's because the world that we're living in isn't the way that it's supposed to be, intended originally. Maybe the way that we were created to be is not the way that we are actually living, and we're living a different way than the way that God had originally intended for us to live. Well, one sport that I love to play is I love to play baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. I've been playing since I was a little kid, and I can play just about anywhere on the field, but my favorite position is shortstop. And I think that's the spot that I'm most wired for. I just thrive in that spot, in that position. But I remember when I was in high school, I was in a rec league, and we didn't have a ton of people that were able to pitch, and we had a game where no one else was able to pitch except me. And so they're like, "All right, Elisha, we're going to have you go up, and we're going to have you throw a few pitches." And I was like, "Oh, no, like I know how this goes. Like I'm not very good. The only pitch I know how to throw is a fastball." And so I go up on the mound, and I pitch the first pitch, and I get an out. And then I pitch the second pitch, and I get an out. I'm like, "Oh, maybe I'm not too bad at this." But then 70 pitches later, it's the same inning, and I'm just exhausted, just throwing this pitches, and I'm like, "Oh man, can someone please just relieve me? I just want to go home." But I wonder if the reason why I was so exhausted was because I was playing a position I was never meant to play in the first place. It wasn't how I was wired. It wasn't how I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be playing shortstop. I wasn't made to pitch. And I wonder if many of us are playing a position that we were never meant to play in the first place. We were putting on the expectation that we're supposed to get things done, that we're just supposed to be doing and just be productive and just get the next thing done. And we just think that if I'm just doing the right things, that if my job defines who I am, that in the midst of all of these things, that would be the answer, that that's the role that I need to play. But what if the role is simply to stop and to know that God loves you, that God blessed you, that he created you, and then out of that blessing, then become the image bearer and be the blessing in the world that God wants you to be? We don't have to try to produce results. We don't have to work for effort and put all the expectations on ourselves to get it all figured out. It's so burdensome. It's so exhausting. But the good news is that God doesn't leave us to do this life alone. God, he's with us in the midst of it. I think back, he's hovering over the waters in the beginning. God is hovering over us. He's interacting with this world. He has a plan. He has a purpose for you. And it's out of that blessing that he wants to bestow that. So when we look to the Creator and we listen to the words that he says about us, then we will know who we are and what it is that we are made to do. The Creator brings clarity to our confusion by speaking blessing and purpose over our lives. The Creator brings clarity to our confusion by speaking blessing and purpose over our lives. This Creator wants to bring clarity to your confusion by speaking blessing and purpose over your life as well. Again, it's so easy to put our identity in the things that we do. Like maybe for you, you're a young parent and you just entered into this journey trying to raise the kids the right way. But most days, it seems the kids are fighting, the house is a mess, and every time you try to put the kids to bed, it seems like it's just like a battle. It's like a war going on. And you see the chaos, and you see the disorder around you, and it's so easy just to let that failure to sink in, or what that feeling of failure to sink in. Or you find yourself at work, and it seems like the only way you gain approval by your boss or your coworkers is just by getting the work done. But the assignments add up, the tasks, the projects start to become more challenging, and now maybe you stay up at night just hoping that you can just get everything done on time. But the good news is that our identity isn't based on how everything is going in our lives. It's not based on how much work we're getting done or how much, or even if the kids in the house looks perfect and spotless. But our identity is based on what God has said about us, that we are blessed, and that we have a relationship with God, and that we're made in his image, and that is our role. Not necessarily that everything is going the way it's supposed to. And that blessing that God gives us comes before we do anything. So if you're ever feeling confused about who you are, if you're feeling confused about what it is that you are supposed to be doing, I encourage you to do two things: to look and to listen. Look at who God is. He is the Creator. He is the author, the ruler. He is the sustainer. He's filled with life. He blesses creation, and it's his image that we bear. So when we look to him, we see the image that we were made to bear, and we listen. We listen to what it is that God says about us, that he made us to rule over creation, to be his reflection, to be blessed with the life that he has given us, and add that blessing to bless the world that he has created us to be a part of. Because when he speaks, creation responds accordingly, because his voice is what defines our reality. It's what he says about us that determines who we are and what we do. Not what we say about ourselves and not what someone else maybe has been saying about us, but it's what God has said about you. God, again, does not see you as a burden bearer just to get things done. He sees you as his precious image bearer. Oh, such good news. We are made in his image. We are meant to glorify and worship him, and his burden is light. If you find yourself confused about who you are in any situation, don't run to all the voices that try to tell you who you are. Don't try to run to social media. Don't run to Google to find out what's going on with you. Go to the one who knows you, who made you, who knows you better than you even know yourself. Let him speak that identity over you. Because when we look and listen, then we'll know how to live. When we look and listen, then we'll know how to live. Well, let's go back a little bit. Maybe you're that young parent and you don't always feel like you have everything all figured out. And it's tempting to look at your situation and feel like, oh man, everything is just a mess around me. Or you're a student and you're working and it seems like all the work is just getting piled up and it seems overwhelming. Well, I encourage you, look to the Creator. Look at what he does in the face of chaotic situations. Well, he speaks over them. What does he do over the confusion? He speaks over the confusion too. What does he do when disorder comes? Well, he speaks over the disorder. And he calls us to do the same thing, to speak life and to speak blessing over the things that maybe seem chaotic or disordered in our lives. Because we look just like our image. Our image speaks, and our image changes, and our image makes things happen with his words. And the same thing can happen with us. And listen to what God says. Does God say that you are a failure? Does God say that you are supposed to carry all these burdens, all these expectations? No. He says that you are blessed and that you are loved and that he wants to have a deep and loving relationship with you. You see, it's in these moments when we stop and we look and we listen that we're not just making ourselves feel better, that we're not just making our situations just work better and be in our favor. No, but we're discovering who it is that God, our Creator, it's what he has made us to be. We discover who he has created us to be. Because before the world told you what you were supposed to do, before failure told you who you are, before even success told you who you were supposed to be, God spoke. And when God speaks, then we'll know who we are. Then we'll know how to live. And when we know how to live, we no longer have to wonder if we're living the right way anymore. We can walk confidently in the purpose that God has given us. And one thing that I love about this is that all of our callings are different because God has made us unique and different. And so there's no exact right way for you to live. But the good news is that when we know who we are in Jesus, when we know who we are, who God has created us to be, then out of that identity, God shows us what it is that he wants us to do. So you don't have to look and find some formula. It's not about a method. It's a relationship with Jesus. It's not about a method. And so I want you to imagine what Christ Church would look like if we were to walk confidently into this identity and this image bearers that God has given us. If we could walk confidently in that calling. What if someone new came to Christ Church and they encountered confident people who knew who they were and that they knew that they didn't have to perform first to please God, but that they were already well pleased, that God was already well pleased with them? Imagine the impact that we would have on the community, how we can represent God. I think of our outreach events, Light Fest, Egg Fest, Food Family Fun. I think of all these things that we get to do for the community. What if the people encountered us as confident image bearers of God in those spaces? That we knew who we were. The thing is when creation looks at mankind, they see God because they see God's image in us. Imagine what people would come to our events if they saw God's image. Maybe they would know who God has created them to be as well. I think also not just at these events, but I think of our homes. I think of our workplaces. I think of the schools that we're going to, or schools that we just left, but hopefully going back to soon. The places that we go to every day. What if our friends, our family, and our coworkers and our schoolmates, what if they saw us living out as a confident image bearer of God? And they started to see who they were and who God has created them to be as well, just by simply knowing who they are and who the Creator created them to be. Well, I think looking back to my baseball story, I was just exhausted. I was burnt out. I was tired. I just wanted to go home. Everything in me just wanted to shut down and just get off the field. After that 70-pitch inning, I'm like, still can't believe I did that. And I wonder how many of us just feel exhausted for the same reason. We're just playing a position that we were never meant to be in the first place. We've, again, taken that image bearer role and we took on a burden bearer role without the blessing. And I wonder how many of us are listening to the voices that are telling us who we should be and what we should do. But when we look and we listen to the Creator, he speaks over us and he gives clarity to our confusion by speaking blessing and purpose over our lives. The Creator brings clarity to our confusion by speaking blessing and purpose over your life. Let's pray.